For those that don't know me, I'm a former Microsoft product manager. I can't even begin to tell you all the mistakes that I made after coming back into a tech career from a nearly 20-year full-time employment gap. While I had a Cinderella story, I can assure you, I never learned how to dance at that ball. I'm going to share my biggest mistake and how to avoid it from day one. I suspect you don't want to twiddle your thumbs and have your mouth feeling like it's full of big batches of cotton balls in your mouth when someone asks you questions or challenges your assumptions. I guarantee you, by not doing this one thing, I was unable to promote as fast as I could have. I struggled with confidence in meetings and dealing with a racing heart rate while presenting to leadership, as I hoped they wouldn't ask me about a specific challenge with the project. I even struggled with weekly one-on-ones with my manager at times. All of that could have been avoided, and I'm going to show you how. Ready? Okay. If you really want to succeed, you need to concentrate on showing how you made impact with the projects that you're working on. If you don't tell a good before and after story and how you moved that needle, you're not going to be taken as seriously as the person who was able to show what they accomplished with numbers. See, I'm a big mush ball of empathy and doing right by the customer, but feelings and hunches only get this look from people listening to your product suggestions. Not getting this correct will affect your promotion timeline. It will take so much longer. You won't feel as confident in meetings or presentations. You flat out may present as incompetent to your very own team members. I'm sure I had that experience, so please learn from my errors. Don't do it. If people don't trust your progress from day one, you will not be in a position to prove your worth when it comes to office politics and necessary visibility when employee review time comes. When all of this goes wrong, you give imposter syndrome a true chance to take hold of your day, while that icky little voice whispers lies, lies, and more lies about your self-worth. How does that not affect overall work productivity? If you want to change that narrative, I'm going to give you tips and will help you. Also, if you're one of the unfortunate people out of work right now, that's me. This is a great way to upskill while you're looking for a job. Here's the thing. Data is king. I was told early on at onboarding that we were a data-driven organization. I never argued that, but I also didn't know how to get the best data or even what data I needed to tell that story. I didn't take the time to really think about what success looked like for any of the projects that I was implementing. For example, as a release manager for a major global tech company shipping at least once a week to hundreds of thousands of people, I failed to take notes on how often we were shipping and how many bugs or features we were shipping in each new release. I didn't document how many teams that I worked with, all the steps that I took to make sure we were compliant. I didn't document how I created a process that gave more clarity for all of the teams to know what was going into the release and what needed to be done by what time to make sure we shipped on time with full compliance and global regulations implemented. That was one of the busiest jobs that I've ever had, and yet I struggled to prove it when it came to employee review time. And when I tried to document it on my resume, months or years later, really tough. It's important to keep in mind that you are building your resume with every completed project. I now encourage people who are employed to take time to update their resume every time they complete a project with impact numbers. Do it. So what would I do now if I could go back and change everything? I would really deep dive into learning data analytics. With big tech companies, you're often faced with data spread out in multiple locations. Sometimes legacy systems have been merged with new systems, and with that, there are data tables and information in old formats or duplicated when merged with that newer system. This reality can be especially tricky when you're trying to figure out which fields correlate with different labeled fields in different tables. Learning how to work with a basic query language such as SQL and truly understanding how to join tables together can at least get some data to start with so you can measure impact. It's also entirely common for a lot of data to exist with no schema or diagram of where specific data lives and what is useful to you and the analytics you need to accomplish. Talk about a reason to pull your hair out. These tables could be a source of many of my gray hairs, actually. See, it may be that sometimes data only goes so high in a table hierarchy that there's a point when you're blocked in understanding the full data story. If you can learn these blockers ahead of time, you can start shaping what story you're able to tell when it comes time to measuring that impact. In addition, many big tech companies have engineers that can pull that data for you, but you really need to understand what you're asking so they can find it and make sure that it correlates with that story you're telling. If your engineering team is balancing different priorities, timelines, you may find that they have to throw together the query for you without being able to check and double check that it returns exactly what you need. That's your job as a PM. Once you get data, you also need to understand how to shape it into that story that you need to tell. What metrics are important for success? Can you make charts and graphs from multiple tables? Can you use Python to help crunch that data? There are existing tools that each company uses, and understanding as many as possible is important. Many are similar, but you need to understand basic functionality. For example, we often used Excel or Power BI. I didn't even know how to do a pivot table when I started. In addition, I was also guilty of importing such a large amount of data or querying for that data because I didn't know what I needed, that it got bogged down and it really slowed down the software if it didn't stop it altogether. It was much harder to work with that many rows and columns. I spent many hours of frustration trying to figure out how to get the right amount of data to validate a point without causing an additional headache because I didn't really know how to use the software. It's really important that you start learning tools and how to use them with sample data available on the internet. If you struggle on what types of projects to work on to test your data knowledge, you can use AI to help you formulate questions and then you try to answer them. If you get stuck, you can always ask for help through the same tools that gave you the questions. Often AI can help you formulate tables that you can then use to put in a single sheet and combine it in something like Excel, and then learn how to tie that information together in order to produce those complicated presentations in a succinct way. I would say step number 1 is start learning that query language and the tools to process the data with maximum efficiency. I have another major tip to tell you, but if you're liking this content, please give this post a like or share, which helps support this small creator. The next tip I would advise any PM to do if you want to tell better data stories is to learn how to write a good survey. Often the needle that we're moving is customer sentiment, visits to a website, how often a feature is used, or if they're likely to continue using your product or new feature. If what we work on isn't actually solving the customer problem, we've made things difficult for ourselves before we even started. Learning how to ask open-ended questions can give a lot of clarity on what we're working on and why. As a PM, I like to relay the business case to our engineers as well, so if they ever made a decision without me, they would know the goal. If they saw blockers, they'd be able to alert me of those early on, and then they knew the credit that they could take when it came time for their reviews and the impact that they made to the business. If you get the opportunity to interview customers directly, it's important to ask questions like, how do you do this now? And listen for their pain points. If you see a similar pain point surfacing over and over again, that might be an indicator that that's the thing you actually need to work on, even if what you set out to do should be slightly different. As a product manager, my goal was to be the voice of the customer. I had to understand how they actually used a product, and I had to get rid of preconceived notions on how I thought they used the product. Corporate courage is developed by being able to represent your customer well. Often it's these pain point conversations that can lead you to creating better surveys to get more data to validate your hypothesis. As an example, we may have been trying to solve a problem on why people aren't visiting a specific subpage on our website. We may think the page has bad SEO and try to solve that problem. In reality, it could be that the page is not discoverable from menus or links further down in the page that would lead them to it. It could be that the content right above the page section is more interesting and users click off of it before they ever get to the section of the page that would have led them to the subpage. Learning how to talk with customers, asking the right questions on surveys, and even using things like anonymized heat maps to see where mouse cursors are located while users browse a site can help understand what's actually happening. All of this can help you move confidently in building the features that you're working on and telling the story to the people that matter in evaluating your performance. The unfortunate reality is that I didn't learn this lesson for a couple years into my comeback career. And well, after I bumbled one too many times when someone asked me why we were solving the problem we were solving, I would think it was obvious. We want more clicks. We want more feature interaction. We want more downloads. I never took the time to define what more looked like. If you want to succeed in a corporate world, understanding data is not just a good suggestion, it's vital. Even if you spend 15 to 30 minutes a day learning this new skill, it will pay dividends in the long run. Your resume will be stronger, your skills as a PM will be stronger, your corporate presence will be stronger, and ultimately you will be valuable so you can promote so much faster than I did. Learn from my mistakes, young Padawan, so you don't have to struggle in the same way I did. Now it's your turn. What lessons have you learned in a corporate world that held you back from promoting, that you wish you would have known on day one? Let's help each other out in that quest to become better employees with greater value and self-confidence. If you like this content, make sure to visit the link in my bio where I have more resources on professional networking, including how to use AI to get you unstuck when reaching out to other people or even writing that dreaded email. Keep being intentional in your work and have a fabulous day.